Hey Joe, this is Mike. Can you hear me over? Hey Mike, this is Joe. I've got you, Lima Charlie. How you, me? Over. I've got you, Lima Charlie. Break. You hear about this Joe with the hot mic? Over. No, dude. I've got the Joe on. Let me pour a cup and give you the get some. Over. Roger that. Stand by to get some.
Okay, so I just got done saying I'm just doing one take and I fuck it up the first time.
You're good. You're good.
let me.
Which is also funny because it happens on every single radio transmission with a Joe. They'll be like, "Hey, fucking Inferno 6 Delta," because you'll call their drivers Delta, and it's usually who answers, or like Romeo, their radio guy. He'd be like, "Yo, Inferno 6 Romeo, fucking this is fucking Painkiller 7," you know, and you'll be like, "Paint 7, Romeo 6, this is." Say again last, and then like if you're good, they'll be like, "Say again last," like. What the fuck? It's Inferno 6. It's fucking Painkiller 7. And he's like, and they're like, "Take your head out of your ass and give me your fucking commander." And he's like, I'm like, "Sir, there's someone on the line for you." You go, "Who?" He's like, "I don't, 76, fucking Inferno." I'm like, "Bro, I'm Inferno 6. Who the fuck?" And he's like, "God, give me the fucking mic, dude." Like, like Joes don't get training on it unless their guy unless their team leader teaches them, which is some other fucking 18-year-old zinned up on fucking White Monster, and like he'd be like, "Bro, it's not that important," and you're like, stop teaching these guys the wrong shit, dude. Like,
the one time I ever had to interact with a tactical radio,
I vomited.
Dude, I threw up in my mouth because the guy. So I was there to transcribe what was coming across. And coming across the radio, and for the life of me, I could not compute quickly enough the numbers he was rattling off, and like make that make sense in my mind fast enough for me to write it down. So he rattles off like the 6-digit number, and
you already copy the alphabet backwards, comes down from 100.
Yeah, right.
Prime numbers only. You're like, fucking.
Yeah. So like he rattles it off, and I'm like, what? Or something.
Yeah, I heard most of that. Can you just say all of it again, though? Like,
yeah, just to be sure. Yeah. So he rattles it off again, and I'm like, and so then by the third time, he's like slightly shouting, And then by that time, I'm like, I think I either was able to do it on the third try, or I was like, okay, this isn't gonna work. We're gonna have to figure something else out.
Right.
But
what's fun is like you always buy your time. It's like trading space for time in the battlefield, where you're like delaying the enemy. And you'd be like, "Hey, you're coming in broken and unreadable. Can you say that one more time, please?"
Yeah,
and they'll be like, "How about you go check your mic and then try?" You know, he's like, "I fucking know this was working," and you're like, "No, it's good on my end. I think it's you. Lower and slower, please." And then you tell him like what you messed up. And you're like, "Yeah, try talking normal. Don't use your radio voice." Like. Yeah, it's good. Over is always safe. It's called lack of discipline when people.
You're never wrong.
There's a term for it. Yeah, it's called lack of discipline. Yeah, LOD, and and when you get once you get past second lieutenant, as long as you start the first segment with it, you're always fine. But like if it's some Joe, you'd be like, "How about a fucking over?" So I know you're done speaking. And you're like, "Roger." And people use break and standby like they're the same thing, but standby is like a shorter pause, and break is like I just fucking tripped and I'm getting up and I'm doing the Peter Griffin like, and then you go like, "All right, hey, this is Inferno 6. The last thing to have like, and they're like, "Did you just trip?" You're like, "No, my radio fell out of my pocket and I didn't fucking hit my head on the roof trying to get in my truck." Like,
So the funny part is that these radio terms get used in emails all the time.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm sure it happens in the Army too, but in the Air Force and Space Force and stuff, it gets treated. Sometimes it comes across as if, the guy or the gal is like tactical, like super tactical, right?
Yeah.
So so in an email they'll be like, blah 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 blah. Hey, break, blah blah blah, separate topic. And it makes sense it makes sense to the point where young people who haven't deployed or haven't used a radio will pick that up and they'll just run with it, right? So then they start to use it, but they don't know like what it is. Then the over. So people will also use that, especially as VTCs became more popular during COVID.
Yeah.
They'll also use the radio terminology on the VTCs,
Right.
and that can
Which
be
is way more
helpful.
appropriate because it's
Yeah.
actual audio. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it has the same purpose because 9 times out of 10, you've got some guy, you
Yeah.
got
Yep.
some guy doing the dilly dally
Right.
dance on the,
Yeah.
static electricity dance on the phone on the
Yeah.
VTC, and you're
Yeah.
like, you don't know if you're coming through, and they don't know if you're, they don't know if you know that you're
Right.
not, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, but like I probably on a VT, because I'm trying to think, I'm on VTCs all the time,
Hmm.
and if I go on
I'm
like a
on right
mono,
now.
yeah, I know, right? Like, yeah, uh, like I'll generally say over when I'm done talking,
Hmm.
because also like goddamn, like it's so easy to lose comms or to like people
Oh yeah.
accidentally hit hang up when they meant to hit like mute and like other bullshit like that. So
Right.
yeah, dude, it's pretty funny, but
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because usually old people will use it on VTCs, and like by that I mean lieutenant colonels and beyond, and boomers. And so it's but it's like, and then they feel like the dork, or like the rule for the unwritten rules, the first person to do it's the dork in the room, and then if no one else is doing it, you give that guy grief later. But
yeah,
it's like I said, it's appropriate mostly because you're actually on an audio transaction. The email one's
yeah,
funny, but the email one's even funnier, honestly, because like you put break in there when you want like the rest of this two line to like read the rest, and that's like one of the only ways to catch it. Which email is also getting incredibly hard to communicate with people now with like fucking adult onset army ADHD, as I call it, where you're like too long didn't read, you're like fuck
yeah,
dude, like that was
TLDR.
a yeah, like I can't put that in a shorter, more concise manner, man. Like it's a paragraph worth of information. And they're like, yeah, I didn't see that email. I'm like, bro, you didn't read the email. It's fucking, that's the
Exactly. Yeah,
difference.
yeah.
Like,
Well, and that's
yeah,
the key. Like I remember when I was a young lieutenant at my first assignment, like 90 days on the job, right? Like
yeah,
um, I had two experiences with email that really helped shape my understanding that there was an etiquette and that, it's better if you follow the etiquette. So the first
right.
experience was my direct supervisor, who was the GS-15 chief engineer. He sent
Yeah,
me an email and he's like, hey, so there's going to be a TDY to Colorado. Are you available to travel these dates or whatever? And I was typing up my response, and then he like had come over while I was typing it up, but I had gotten pretty far into my response. But my response was, something along the lines of, um, hey, thanks. I'd love to travel, but I've got plans to go do blah 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 and blah blah blah, and so I could probably do blah blah blah, but blah blah blah. It was just like ramble, like all these details that did not need to be discussed. It was simply the response that was required was, no, I'm not available.
yeah,
Right? But he had come by my desk. I was like, oh, hey, hey, Brian. This is Brian. His name is Brian. Oh, hey, Brian. Yeah, I was just about to, send you this response about your email. And so then he's like looking over my shoulder at the computer, and he's like, he didn't say anything directly about the message, but as he's reading, I can see him like skimming and like mouthing as he's reading, and like I can see that he's just confused, and he's just like, okay, so like, are you available or not? And I'm like, no, 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 I'm not gonna be available. I'd love to go, but I can't. It's like, okay,
right.
cool. Like, that's all I needed to know. And so like he didn't tell me anything directly, but I gathered from that exchange. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess this email is kind of like too much information, and that he just needed to know if I needed to could travel or not. But then the
Right.
second experience was I had responded to a like GS 14 or 15, probably a 15 program manager, maybe a 14. Anyways, um, and my email started off with hey blah blah blah, and then like jumped into the message or whatever. And so some retired, he was a contractor at that point, but some retired Air Force officer talked to me about that later. I think he even called me over because we all sat in cubes and we were all pretty close to each other physically, So it's like, hey, this is just a bit of professional advice. Don't ever start an email off with hey. It's like that's pretty informal. I don't think he said slang, but he's like, hey, like it's not professional. It's pretty informal. So, you know, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Like you want to start off with that. And he wasn't admonishing me, but he genuinely cared about my development, and he kind of just gave me those handful of pointers. Um, and I'm fortunate that I received that early on, because there are so many people that don't hear that kind of information until they're captains or majors or lieutenant colonels, frankly. And by that time, they're pretty set in their ways, or they've already built up their defensive mechanisms to the point where, like, you're not going to teach them anything new, and they're not going to, you know what I mean? Like, they're not going to hear what you have to say about professionalism or that kind of thing.
Right.
So,
yeah, some dude scuffed me up as a new lieutenant, and I don't know. I've been in the Army for like 2 or 3 months. I think I'd already gone through sapper school, and this guy was like, I think I said I like wrote my emails to very much the way I talk. And he was like, hey, as like a point of professionalism or whatever, like, don't write your emails like that, like, be better or some shit. And I was like, fuck this
yeah,
guy. And then I went to my XO about it, his other first lieutenant that knew him better. He was like, yeah, like, he's like, you don't want to write them how you talk. Like, keep it short, concise, like,
yeah,
just put the pertinent or whatever. He's like, don't do them how you speak because it's just too much and like you'll lose people's. And I was like,
yeah,
okay, like,
yeah. Well, and going back to your comment about, the TLDR, too long didn't read.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that's definitely a skill. And whether I use, because every now and then, if someone else in the email chain has already used break, like I may, be inclined to use break. But normally what I do is I'll have a very brief email, and I typically follow up with a voice track to the person or the people. If I'm unable to follow up in person with a phone call or in person, um,
Right.
I may have a little bit longer of an email with like more detail, but I will always break it up into, like, if I don't use any bullets, my paragraphs are no more than 2 sentences. If I have more than 2 sentences in a paragraph, I'll break it out by bullet points, and the bullet points may be sentences, but I'll have a header sentence, and then the other sentences will be the sub bullets, because if you're skimming it, it's much easier to skim and see the pertinent information. Because if you break it out by bullets like that, I also leverage bolding and underlining and like italics.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so if they're like, if I'm addressing multiple people and I'm like, hey Tommy, I need you to do this, and hey Sally, I need you. Here's a question for you, and hey Billy, the thing you
Yeah.
asked for was, here's your answer.
Yeah.
I'll no kidding, like, bold or highlight their names so that
Yeah.
they can see, like, oh hey, Tommy only needs to read his piece, or Sally because you're always going to read your name. You may or may not read the rest
Yeah.
of it,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
at least will see the thing that is addressed to you, the portion that's addressed to
Yeah.
you.
Right.
But this contractor that I work with, like, he's a retired Navy '06, and he's been like, he's something like, he's got like 78. He's
Right.
like so old, and that's not
Last of the
anything
hard.
against what?
Last of the hard, as we say.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, pretty sure he served in World War II.
The
On a
last hard
PT
Navy
boat.
training was the one he went through.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Like, he's the guy that
Right.
trained Kennedy, yeah, in the
Yeah.
Pacific.
Yeah.
And but like, bless his heart, man. His emails are just hot garbage. I don't know at what point emails became commonplace, but he missed the boat on that one,
Right.
because he word vomits how he speaks. But the problem is that he also just puts it all into one giant paragraph. So it doesn't
Mm.
matter if he's got a 2 sentence response or
Yeah.
a 2 page response. The thing is one paragraph. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, bro.
Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a fucking hot baby diaper wrapped in day-old Indian food, wrapped in a
Right.
dumpster fire. Like,
Yeah.
and I had to tell him, I'm like, hey man, like, you can't do this. You can't do this anymore, bro.
Right.
So like, you gotta, like, and I'll point him to like my emails. I'm like, I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect by any means, but like, look at this. Like,
Right.
this is what I'm talking about. Like, I have, like, this giant, like, trophy fish worth of information, but I only put
Right.
these like 4 bullets, because he also does things like I had tried to do, where people will ask him if he's available for like training or something to provide, because he's a trainer, and
Yeah.
and he'll do like a flowery half-page response of like, oh no, well, I'm going to be out of town and blah blah blah, and I have these plans and these plans. It's like, look, like, all you need to say is yes or no. And then if
Yeah.
it's no, suggest other dates. Like,
Right.
don't give them your
Yeah.
fucking life story. Just,
Right.
like, God bless America.
Yeah. Which I'm guilty
So
of at times. That's me at times where I'll be like, yeah, no, because the way the internet works, like someone's like, can you fucking just send me? I'm like, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got it.
yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
also like because most of my emails will start off. There's a famous quote from Mark Twain, I think it is, or Benjamin Franklin. One of them said, I'm sorry for the long letter. I didn't have time for a shorter response," something like that. Because the whole concept is that the more time you have, the more concise you can be. Because if
Right.
you,
Yeah. Yeah,
um,
like editing and proofreading and
yeah, or just
yeah.
making every word count, right? Whereas if you don't have, uh, if you have all the time in the world, well, then it doesn't matter. And or wait, did I get the backwards? If you have more time, you can make every word count.
Right.
Uh, but if you don't, if you only have like 5 minutes to send a response, then you're just gonna like word vomit and send your first draft. First draft email is gonna be sent out. So I find myself at times where I won't have the time to really organize my email and organize my response. And so the first draft that I kick out, I typically am like kicking myself because I've included like too much information or I haven't organized it properly for folks to glance through. And because you get like those obvious questions back or that obvious confusion sets in and you have to clarify later. It's like, no, I didn't mean that, or no, I'm sorry, I couldn't explain it earlier, but here's what here's what I meant to say, kind of a deal. Um, so it's still possible to make mistakes, but typically it's due to lack of time. And then the real frustration is when you sit there and you jam out on an email for like an hour, and you're like, fuck, did I spend an hour drafting this email? It's perfect, but I mean, like, goddamn, it's been an hour, like, or longer sometimes.
Right. Yeah, which is also how I feel about papers for like any school assignment ever. I'm like, yo, I'll take the 3 hour short quick answer versus editing it for 16 hours to chop off all the fucking work I put into it, you know?
Yeah. Well, at a certain point, you have to figure out like at what point do you pinch it off? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
especially for those senior leader emails where sending it to multiple general officers or like multiple senior leaders, it's like gosh, I've already it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon when I started this thing, and it's already like 8 o'clock. I've been jamming on this for 3 hours now. Like even if I jam on it for another 3 hours, it's gonna relatively stay the same. So it's good to go now. You know, it may not have been good to go 2 hours ago or 1 hour ago, but it's good to go now. So like just stick a fork in it. It's done. Um, but those are the typical. That's you could probably. That's the kind of stuff where you gotta double check because if there's confusion at the senior leader level, which there can easily be, um, that's uh, more of a significant emotional events for everybody compared to like some O3, being confused or some like O6 being
Right.
confused.
Yeah.
And then also like
Yeah.
understanding when an email is inappropriate. So if you know that your
Right.
response, the best thing to do in those cases is just send a very like 6-word response, and it just be like, hey, either ask for a voice to voice or face to face directly, um, or be like, hey, look, that's going to take more than an email to respond. Like, can we talk or something to that effect? Because I've come to realize that it's better to like ask directly for a face to face or not provide the response to the question that they're asking for, uh, compared to the alternative, which is, the only way to respond is a long, like 6-page email that contains all the information they're asking for, because that's not gonna, 9 times out of 10, that's not what they really want, and they're not gonna understand it anyways. So it's better just to ask, like, hey, look, I really think we should talk about this. Do you have time tomorrow? Or like, hey, look, I really think we should talk about this. Like, what's your earliest
Right.
convenience? Um, and frankly, even if it's a senior leader, because I'm fortunate that my responsibilities, my last couple of assignments have been trusted positions, and so it's I've had the experience to know and understand that like just because some like a general asks for something, like
Right.
you don't have to give him exactly what he asked for. You can give him what he wants, right? So like uh the song, you can't only get what you want, but try sometimes just might find you get what you need kind of a deal.
Right.
It's like you got to give them what they need, not what they've asked for, because what they asked for is fucking asinine. What they've asked for is
Mm-hmm.
like the sun and the moon. Like that's not what
Yeah.
they want though. What they want is this thing. And so, the reason I said it was a trusted position is because you come to the point where you understand the person, you understand the senior leader, and so you become more comfortable saying like, sir, like I think based on your feedback or based on your inputs, like I think this is what you're asking for, and so
Right.
that's different from I think this is what you want, which is different than what you asked for. So let's have a talk about it or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
and generally speaking, they can be receptive to that, but like we've talked about before, and it tends to happen on the Army side more often than not that it happens exclusively on the Army side, but you can still have the senior leaders that say like, hey man, like what didn't you understand about what I asked for? Like I asked for that, so give me that, and like they don't care about your opinion. They don't care
Yeah.
what you think they asked for. They care about answering the question. And it's like, okay, well,
Right.
like so, you know,
Yeah.
that can always be fun
Yeah.
too.
Right. And I like find myself writing out this like long email that is, that was the best of times, it was the worst of times, and then I'm like, hey, I'm gonna give you a short snippet of this iceberg that I have, and like if you need more information, call me, and or like when you're confused reading these 4 bullets that I dwindled down, please call me, like because it is that crazy confusing and like, um,
I'm looking forward
yeah,
to the day when sending memes via email as part of an official response becomes appropriate because
right,
it could be like 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 the there's all sorts of memes that could be used to visually depict the ambiguous text response that you're trying hard to like jam through when it's like a picture
yeah,
is worth 1,000 words. Um, where it's like, the old ladies, the sewing circle, who was like, that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Like that would be applicable in quite a
yeah,
few situations where technical matters are involved. Because you got,
yeah.
but anyways, that'd be fun.
Yeah, I want to see the days when email goes away and we just go right to Teams because there's literally no reason to have fucking email anymore. Like, other than, well, and here's the rub, let me rephrase this. The only reason to me to send an email is to an external entity, um, of which, in jobs I've had, that sure, that's very needed. However, internal, you should never be sending an internal email, is my opinion. Because I'm like, bro, if you have my Teams me, because you can type it, it's easier, blah blah blah. You can hang files way easier because it essentially just hangs it on the cloud instead of emailing it across the internet. And like, I would rather that and then sit on a unread Teams versus you send me an email because it's we have so many communication methods now and it's almost out of control. It's almost out of actual control in Garrison, and like Tactical World's the same problem set, but it's
Yeah,
more
well,
refined.
the the private industry has the same challenge because they have like Slack and Twitter and email
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Teams and SharePoint. And um, I am old enough to remember when people talked about SharePoint in the same way that you're talking about Teams,
yeah,
where it's like, oh well, in the future we're not going to send emails back and forth. It's going to be all on SharePoint because you can do a lot of this kind of communication on SharePoint. And but I'm not suggesting that email should forever and always be the thing. I just think it'll be difficult to replace um, because the outside world hasn't figured it out yet. And what I mean by that is, again, you've got so many options, right? Like Slack and
yeah,
so you have all these like instant messaging apps as well as email as well as
yeah,
file storage like SharePoint, and then it's to the point now where the commercial industry also has services to tie all that together so that you see your like Slack messages alongside your emails, alongside your tasks from this other system, alongside your Kanban board from this other system, alongside your, and that's all visible in the dashboard, which is another system.
Which brings us to our next sponsor of a company we started. It's called Comms Incorporated, where we take all of your communication platforms and dwindle them down into one simple graphic user interface that's friendly to use from mobile or computer. And you don't have to go chasing through your physical mail, your electronic mail, your AOL. It's all there for you in one easy to read view. Right, and it's a $9.99 monthly subscription, which is going to get you for $12.99. You get the premium package, right? Yeah, but yeah, it is as bad because the Army is that plus all that bullshit. Like it's because
Go ahead.
It's because it's all that civilian bullshit you just mentioned plus the fucking Army networks. So it's like, you know what I'm saying, bro? Anyway, but I'm gonna save the Army from itself. But you also, it's just craziness because like each unit's also different too. So like, if some units you get here, like, yo, we use Slack, and you're like, okay, and you fucking go to the next unit, and they're like, yo, we use Kakao or whatever, and you're like, okay, roger that, and then you're like, hey, we use fucking that's Signal, like.
But here's why though. The reason why that occurs is because your email is your official method of official communications, right?
Yeah.
So if a FOIA request comes through and your office is directed to turn over all official records related to X and Y X and Y topic, your emails are official records and they will be provided. Your personal cell phone is your personal cell phone, but the government, and for us, the DoD does not have an official method unless you have an official government phone. There is no official mechanism to communicate. So what? There are the only thing is that there's a standard for like, and I forget the label. It's like it's not IP level 4, but it's something like blah 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 level 4, where that type of system with that type of security is authorized for what used to be referred to as UFOUO, for official use only. But now it's CUI.
That's the old busted.
Yeah, I forget what CUI stands for. So anyway, but it's the same thing where it's unclassified but still controlled material. So what that means is there's no official way to communicate with text messages of any type because there's no official chat messenger that's been approved for that level of communication, or even just straight up on class, because that's not there's no official chat messenger or whatever besides your government cell phone and like your government text messages. So the reason why that's important to the conversation is that's why every new unit you go to has their own tool that they use. And typically the free tools, right? No one's out there paying for something that they could get for free unless they're a dummy. So, Tommy's the commander at the, 512th. So he decides that, well, I like Slack, so I want to use Slack. I'm going to direct all my guys to use Slack. And they're going to Slack group and Slack.
Yeah.
And then, you PCS or Tommy PCSs, the new guy comes in, says, fuck that guy, I'm the new commander now. We're going to switch over to fucking, Signal, and we're all going to use Signal. And then over the course of a couple of years, you have these like series of abandoned group chats and group websites and group whatevers because every new commander that comes in just changes their mind. And even if they keep the old guy's thing for a while, the next guy's going to change it or the next gal's going to change it. It's not like over the past 20 years, any given unit that you've ever been a part of has changed on average every 4 years. And you can see it because the records will be empty, or the chat messenger you use today will only go back, like 3 years. They were using something else before that. It's just not the same thing as they're using today. So.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, you're right on the official comms piece and like all that nonsense, bro, here's the thing for context. almost no one in the Army below the level of lieutenant colonel has a government phone. So like that's why it's wild. And
Yeah.
like
So you'd think it'd be a bigger
the
problem that they'd want to fix,
yeah,
right?
yeah, you'd
But
think we'd have the ability to like,
it's all
yeah,
these
dude,
cyber weenies who are like, well, what's happened is that they're stuck in paralysis of by analysis because they haven't been able to find that commercial solution or even develop a government solution that
right,
could be downloaded on your personal phone for use for official comms that has the requisite security. The commercial world doesn't want to do it because there's no money in it, and the government, um, for whatever reason, refuses to pay somebody to do it because maybe they
and
think
nobody
that it should be
acknowledges it's a
free.
problem.
And no one
Well,
acknowledges that
yeah,
it's a problem.
yeah, and like
Yeah,
there's units that use civilian apps for all their hey boys, check your phones this weekend kind of situation.
yeah,
And that's what should scare the senior leadership. Like that should be the first and foremost problem. So back in the day, all the special units had pagers.
right,
Like if
right,
you ask
right.
some of my family
Yeah,
members
yeah,
that like didn't
yeah,
have pagers, and it was like, yo, beep beep, fucking Orion, or whatever. And they're like,
yeah,
yo, hey, that's the 4 hour, and like, but that is the fucking problem. Is that now we only special units still have those handed down comms items, but like, and they're probably newer. I mean, probably, but like, the problem is that the Joes don't have it, who are also on O plan type of situations, and it's like, hey
yeah.
man, these guys got to put on and pray to God they got some pro word where they're like, hey, did you hear Michael Jackson's Black again or whatever? And they're like, hey, Roger that, I'll go check on the fucking Fox News, like, but that's what should scare the senior leadership because like it would be too easy for the Army to just make it in their old fucking AppWorks basement wherever this fucking cyber center of excellence
Yeah.
is, and like, yo bro, we've got IPS-A on the human phones, on personal private phones, that you're doing two-way transactions, quote unquote, securely about your personal records. So why can't you just give me a goddamn Slack knockoff or a fucking WhatsApp knockoff
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
called like, hey,
So,
Joe's network or whatever, like.
yeah, yeah. So the funny part about all these like innovation things, right? The like AFWorks or like you said, what are the Army Works is called. They all have them, right? All the services have these things, and they also all have these like innovation challenges and whatever else. Um, those types of organizations don't want to touch problems like this because they're the fucking hard problems. And if you're a cool gee whiz bang, innovative acquisition operator, right? Like, as you wearing your acquisition flight suit because you do acquisitions quickly and fast, right? You don't
Right.
want to touch this kind of bullshit because it's hard,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you'll get bogged down, and it'll become a multi-year effort, and you want to go fast and get things out the door in 6 months. So what do? Even if you do receive this in the front door, you figure out quickly that it's going to be a hard problem, and you just fucking shelve
Yeah.
it, and you go on to something
Yeah.
else, something better,
Yeah.
faster, that's easier, and that can be done faster. But whenever I see these articles that get published about like some software factory that built something, it's like, cool, man. Like, who asked for that? Who the fuck
Yeah.
asked for that? Was it one guy in a shop of five, and you save this one guy and his team like 2 hours a year? Like,
Yeah.
fucking get after the stuff that everyone touches everybody, like the PCS process. Like, it chaps my ass that we're still in, now in this year, 2024, and like every single service member has to carry out 10 copies of their orders because they got to
Yeah.
go when they PCS, right? And
Yeah. You get all your
like,
stickers and stamps from the teacher, dude.
yeah, dude. And it's just a ridiculous waste of time. So like,
Yeah.
where's the, virtual piece where,
Right.
you get
Where's
your
PCS
orders?
works, bro? We're fucking
Dude,
starting up
exactly, dude.
PCX works, dude.
Dude, that's where the money's
I'm
at,
here,
man.
yo. I'm here for the American goddamn taxpayers, man. Like I'm here because I'm not even talking about the cost of moving yet. I'm just talking about that butt pain of moving for the SM. Like it's
Yeah.
because you're right. Like, bro, even if the victory was like you had a QR code to your orders that they scanned at your little stations that if you still got to go in because this person needs a desk job and you're like, you go in and beep boop on their scanner and whatever. Or if I can just show them or I email them my thing, I'm standing right there and I send them for my dot mail or whatever. I give it to the little station to get my sticker stamp. I'm like, cool. Because it's craziness. I mean, because it's not. And also, like, I was talking to someone at work the other day where it's like, yo, things need to drive things. Like, it's like, yo, data needs to drive decisions, or like maps need to inform commanders about situational awareness. Like, so that's the same with the PCS orders, the stamp game, where you go and you're like, yo, this thing I'm handing you needs to be conducting a transaction or something that can't be done otherwise, other than me face to face giving you this tree that we gutted and harvested, paper form of a whatever, that has all this nonsense that's on my permanent record. Like, it's in my system. And then what the funniest part is, whenever the Army asks me where I live, I'm like, bro, you moved me here. You did that. It's like asking your dad for my birthday, your mom. You're like, you made me. Like, why are you asking me my birthday, Mom? Like, Mom, you're the one that made me. Like, what are you, crazy? No.
So my favorite that has happened recently, have you heard about this, where the DoD has expanded a trial where if you're trying to get your CAC card renewed, this trial was doing it online, and so they've expanded it to the entire force and retirees and family members. But the details that they published in the article, for God and country to see, and I'm sure they're going to get questions from Congress about this. So the quote is, the DoD currently issues about 4.5 million ID cards each year. About 2.5 million of those are U.S. ID cards, so the military ID cards. And of those, roughly 1 million are renewals, eligible for online renewal.
Yeah.
So with it, and I'm reading right from the articles, I have it right here in front of me. It goes on to say the pilot program is meant to make life easier for family members and retirees. So as I look at that, right, I look at that 4.5 million ID cards a year. Okay. 2.5 of those are the US ID, which they said was Uniform Services Identification. And
which would include the DoD civilians, like F civilians and DEX, and it has to, because there's only people across the entire active duty service members.
So before this expansion, only sponsors with common access cards could request online renewals. But now, most retirees and non-CAC holders are eligible. So that means that your dependent ID card is not the CAC card. So that ID is now eligible.
Correct.
And retiree ID, right? So it says retirees clearly. But so when I see that 4.5 million number, what I'm envisioning is, your friendly neighborhood CAC office, right? The DoD enterprise level, you have 4.5 million people a year going through that office, that conceptual office, to get ID cards. 2.5 of those are these, retiree, dependents, and CAC cards. And then of those, 1 million are renewals, eligible for online renewal. So you've got 4.5 and 1 million. So almost a fifth, right? Or I guess almost a quarter. Almost a quarter. So you look to your left, look to your right. A quarter of these assholes don't need to be, have not needed to be in that office. And I just think too, like, how long I've had to wait to get dependent ID cards, like how long I've had to wait. And just imagine that, right? Like, look to your left, look to your right.
Right.
One of those people didn't have to be there. So a quarter of those people in that waiting room didn't have to be there, because they could have got it online. And so it's like, Jesus Christ. And then you think about the manning of those offices and all the costs associated. Because if you were to reduce the physical manpower by a quarter, again, this is a significant blessing bestowed upon us by high, but it's just ridiculous, because it should have been happening a long time ago. Why is it just now? You don't have to be in state to get a driver's license renewal. Like, why do I? So the whole thing is just absurd, and that, again, the congressional response ought to be like, hey, this is great, DoD, it's going to improve my, the lives of my service members in my district. But like, why the fuck weren't you doing this sooner?
Right.
And what are you doing to expand this too? Right. So I don't know, it's just crazy.
Yeah. And like I mean, it's literally flabbergasted me. Like, I just, because it's also just such a simple transaction that it's, it's craziness. Like, it's actually craziness. that it isn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta get ready to bounce soon. I got a PT appointment, a physical therapy appointment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I gotta go get my neck done.
Just another CT scan.
Yeah, another CT scan. Like, bro, I got my monthly CT scan this month coming out. Like, yeah, and because it's also funny this triage of like the escalation of force where you go, hey, I don't feel good. You go to the doc and they're like, all right, take it easy for 2 weeks, and your doc's like, don't do it for 2 weeks and take ibuprofen. And then you can buy that, by the way. Just go ahead and buy the ibuprofen. And they're like, all right. And then you come back and they're like, yeah, still not good. They're like, really? That didn't? You're like, nope, didn't. And then you go, okay. And they're like,
you mean
so,
not changing
all right.
anything didn't help?
Yeah. And they go, all right, we'll run an X-ray, I guess, if it's still bothering you. You're like, please, I'm not a doctor, but I feel like discovery is the thing. And then you go, okay. And then you wait. You can usually get the X-ray like same day, same appointment kind of thing. You walk down to the lab and they're like, we don't have it. I'm like, can you check again? They're like, click, click, click. Let me get on Facebook. Yep. Oh, we got it. All right. It came through the. I'm like, oh, it came through the pipes, and then
on the Slack channel.
You get their Slack messages. They're like, hey, you need the thing, I guess, and then you get your X-ray, and they're like, all right, and you're like, it was my neck that hurts. Why are you X-raying my feet? And they're like, what? Oh, okay, that's all right, got it. That different name. Yeah, I thought you said a whole. You're like, Roger. So and then you're like, yeah, you'll hear from us. You're like, perfect. I'll never hear from you. Sounds good. And they're like, your doctor will review it and they'll call you if there's any problems. I'm like, I'm sure they'll get right on that. And then, you go back at the doc, you're like, yep, no problem. They're like, all right, well, we'll put in a PT referral. And then that could take sometimes a while if you don't have a PT at your base. And then they go, okay, they'll review it with you at the PT thing and then work out and stretch your neck and whatever. But, yeah, give me, I get you right back though.
Yeah. You have a good one, all right?
All right. Love you, big guy.
Yeah, love you too. Bye.